if someone says sold, I don't need any more information about raw food diets. You convinced me. It's great, and they're completely convinced, and they say on the ride home, I'm doing it, starting tomorrow. But I don't have a juicer, and tomorrow, Sunday morning, they wake up. So for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, what is exactly what they should eat for breakfast? What exactly should they eat for lunch? What exactly for dinner? Assuming they want to be the healthiest person, they're not concerned about taste. They just want to know what would be, they want to get thin, they want to get rid of blood sugar problems, they don't want type 2 diabetes, they don't want cancer, they want to be healthy. They don't even need any description of why. They trust you. Just what is the exact recipe? Breakfast tomorrow, lunch, dinner. They don't have a juicer. They're not just for tomorrow. They don't have a juicer. What should they eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner in as much clear detail as possible?
Well, let's throw some nuance into that. Were they coming from the Western diet to this? Were they vegans before this, etc.?
They're in between.
So let's talk about
sorry.
both. Okay, now it's almost going to sound like we're talking against what we said about 20 minutes ago. So a newbie who's healthy, why not eat fruit in the morning? And you can get ripe fruit even in the middle of winter here in the northern climates called apples. They pretty much pick most apples. And pears, they pretty much pick ripe. So you can get those. I wouldn't depend upon blueberries you get from South America at this time of the year. You can almost say that they're never picked ripe, or those berries. So that would be a good start. Drink a lot. First thing in the morning, we get up, before we leave home, we have at least a quart to a quart and a half of fluid. When are you dehydrated the most? During sleep. Well, in our case, we drink mostly water. Sometimes because of where we live in the tropics, we put some coconut water into it. And if we put any juice of any type in it, it's 5% for taste, flavoring. That's about it. And then, of course, if they don't have a juicer, they should make sure they maintain something between breakfast and lunch, hydrate themselves. If they get hungry, that's when soaked and sprouted nuts or seeds would be a good thing to be taking to give you that filled feeling. If you've been used to eating God knows what, pancakes, holistic pancakes in the morning, something. Your main meal, and I should listen to this because we don't do it, your main meal should be the middle of the day. That's what we do know is the human body between 11:30 in the morning, 1:30 in the afternoon, has hydrochloric acid the most active, so that's when eating the higher protein foods would be most appropriate at that point. And then, of course, eating at night should be a smaller meal, maybe base it on carbohydrates, so that beans, grains, something of that nature. And of course, if they don't have to be 100% raw, then at that point, eat a little bit of cooked food. And our research up in Boston showed that your immune system doesn't fall into leukocytosis when you're healthy till you get beyond about 25-30% cooked food. So you can actually eat a little bit of cooked food without having, a plummeting of the immune function at that stage. So I would probably say that that's a relatively, and before you go to bed, don't drink an awful lot before you go to bed. Try to drink before breakfast, before lunch, before dinner. That took me a lot of work because, my family would sit there with giant bottles of soda at every meal. And we flushed down whatever garbage we were eating with soda. And it was just hard. But we shouldn't be really diluting our enzymatic fluids that break down foods by drinking at the time we eat. We should try to combine foods correctly so that we're not putting a mixed mash of different foods that, by the way, biochemically make it more difficult for the body. It's just easier for the body if you eat pure, monolithically, as our ancestors did. And then vary it every day, because it gets boring to do these things until you have a life. Food was my life when I started this, because I was obese and I had to focus in on it not to be obese. And then later I realized once I got a life, food is a fuel. It's interesting. I'm like an expert in food. I'm not even that interested in food. This is just how I eat.
And I think I'll come at the question a little differently and just share what I eat.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So what I have for breakfast every day, I don't need to vary it because it's varied naturally, is I like to eat my food. And of course you said no juicer. I do juice once in a while, but I usually have a breakfast bowl for my meal in the morning. And so my breakfast bowl, I do some sort of sprouted grains or some sort of sprouts. I do some fruit, so usually berries. I freeze a lot of berries in the summertime because I don't like to buy out of season. So I freeze probably 300 or 400 pounds of fruit.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I do.
You must be doing a lot of picking in the summer.
I do. And I'm fast.
You got to
The
be at that.
Blueberry Farm says I'm the fastest picker they've ever seen. Try to make use of my time. But anyway, I do that. So I have some fruits and some grains, sometimes sprouted, sometimes some cooked as well, depending on what we have available and if I'm running in and out or what. But it's always intact grains only that I use. Kamut berries or quinoa or whatever like that. And then I would have, I make a dehydrated granola as well, which is mostly seeds, to be honest. And you know how people use oil and sugar as their,
Main
whatever, to stick things together with granola. I just use a nut butter, a little bit of tahini and a little bit of nut butter,
that's nice.
and maybe an apple or something like that. And that's the moist ingredients, and then it's dehydrated. So I might have a little bit of that. I also have a jar of mixed seeds, so ground flax, ground chia, hemp, Brazil nuts for the selenium cut up, and that will go on my breakfast bowl. And then I often make, like a cashew cream, and then some sort of almond milk or something like that, and that's my breakfast. I have one giant salad a day, so it's either at lunch or at dinner, which is huge. People look at me and say, how can you eat all of that? It's a big, like a family-sized bowl, and I try to do vegetables of every color. I love watermelon radishes. I just love the color. So I love some purpley blue, and then that bright pink, and then always some orange and some peppers, and just a wide variety there. Always some sprouts, seeds, and I do the soaking and dehydrating of my nuts and seeds before I freeze them. So some seeds, and then I'll often have some sort of a sort of more like a legume, sometimes sprouted lentils, sometimes cooked chickpeas. It'll be something like that. And then my salad dressings are always a nut or seed-based dressing. So I'll take hemp seed and, blend it with, whatever I want to make a nice dressing. And I'll use some sort of lemon or lime or vinegar or something like that to make a dressing. I tend not to use oils. I just want more nutrient density. So I like to use nuts or seeds instead for the dressings. And so that would be a lunch or a dinner. And then the other meal, depending on whether it's summer or winter, if it's winter, I'll be more apt to cook the evening meal. My husband likes to have a warm meal when it's 30 below or whatever.
It doesn't get that cold there, does it?
It'll get to, actually this year it got to about 20 below.
Whoa.
But, so we'll have a stew or some meal, or we'll have a giant salad and a bowl of lentil soup, that would go with it. Whereas in the summer, I might do something like a collard wrap that has a little sauce to dip, or something of that nature. Sometimes I'll make 3 or 4 different salads that are all cold, and then you want a cool meal in the summertime. So that's kind of how I eat, and yeah.
Well, I'm going to come to your house and eat. It sounds good.
Yeah, you're most welcome.
It's right up our alley.
Yeah. So, let's say that you started the morning with cornflakes and milk. If that was your start, or one of those packaged cereals, then it would be a much better step to go to grains that are gluten-free and make your own cereal, like millet, quinoa, amaranth, teff, get some of those grains. You can buy them in any health store. And then take a cup of that and soak it a few hours. So like 3-4 hours is all it takes, really. And then you rinse it really well. And if you can't make it in 3-4 hours, then you can put it in a bowl of water and soak it in the fridge. And then it can be all night there. Rinse it really well. Take 2 cups of water, drain it, take 2 cups of water, and bring it up to boil, and then put it on the side. So that could be your hot cereal, which is so much better than the
Cornflakes.
Cornflakes,
Which
yes.
are acrylamides.
Yeah. So all those boxes, if they can go away from your counter and start feeding your kids better grains in the morning. And, you know, I mean, for us, food combining is the key, because I know when I directed a clinic in Sweden, and I had no idea about food combining, and my breakfast was every fruit under the sun, including the citrus and the grains and the nuts, and then make that a cereal in the smoothie. And of course it tasted great, but you were always bloated and you had no idea why you had all that gas, because there's certain things, fruit and grains don't mix. They don't mix well. So they have different digestive time. So if you really want to start feeling like, wow, I'm digesting better, I'm eliminating, I eat fruit by itself, and then I eat cereal by itself. It's so
And fruit
much
goes
better.
through so quick, that's easy to do.
Yeah. Yeah, so think about better grains that are gluten-free. First of all, for your kids, you do them amazing favor if you take gluten away. It's a big part of problems later, especially with diabetes. And they found that if a child eats gluten when they're first born, let's say after 3 months old, and they actually quadruple the risk of diabetes type 1 later on. So many people come to the institute and they were just diagnosed with diabetes type 1 and they're 30 years old, and we're like, how is this possible? Gluten, absolutely, lifestyle is a big part of this.
Years ago, they were misdiagnosed. They were all told they were 2s, and some of them weren't.